Something many Americans want Congress to pay more attention to is the rise in violent crime that's happening across the country, including in New York. How do you think we should deal with this issue?
It is a serious issue, and but I think it's worth putting the numbers in perspective. In 1990 when I was only two, there were 2,262 murders in New York City. In 2020, there were 48. There had been more murders in the Bronx alone in 1990 than there were in the whole city of New York in 2020. So the murder rate remains far below the historical high in the 1990s. Having said that, we've seen the number of murders go from 289 in 2018 to 468, which is a more than 60% increase. And so that's too glaring to ignore. I have a few quick thoughts. I mean, one, we need greater investment in underserved communities of color, because wherever you have racially concentrated poverty, you will have higher rates of violence. So we have to address the root causes of crime and poverty. Two, we need greater regulation of guns. The United States has more gun violence than the rest of the world because we have more guns. We have too much access to those guns, and we have too little regulation of those guns. And we ought to regulate the safety of guns just like we regulate the safety of automobiles. Ever since the federal government began setting national standards of automobile safety, we've seen a dramatic plummet in the number of fatalities on the road. In a rational world, every gun would be registered and safely stored. Every gun owner would be licensed and trained, and every gun would be subject to a rational background check. But of course, we live in nothing resembling a rational world because of the filibuster, because we have a dysfunctional system where one US senator can filibuster gun safety for 330 million Americans, and not even the murder of elementary school children in Sandy Hook was a strong enough provocation to break the grip of the filibuster. Finally, in policing, I'm in favor of reforming policing, not defunding it by 50% as the Democratic Socialists of America has proposed, not abolishing it altogether. What most Americans want, what most New Yorkers want, is not less policing or more policing, but better policing. Right? We need transparent and accountable and constitutional policing.
I want to stay on policing there for a second. Democratic Representative Cheri Bustos from Illinois, who ran the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, told my colleagues this weekend that defund police is a phrase that I wish had never been uttered. We've got to do a better job of talking about what we want to do. How should we deal with the question of police funding?
So look, if it depends on what I never use the phrase defund police, and I'm against plucking an arbitrary number out of thin air and then defunding police departments. That strikes me as irresponsible. Having said that, there is a conversation to be had about civilianizing functions that historically have been performed by the police. We ought to explore civilianizing our response to homelessness and mental health and substance abuse. We ought to explore civilianizing traffic enforcement. Those are morally necessary conversations to be had, but that's quite different from slashing police departments by 50% or abolishing them altogether.